My name is Sarah Whitman. I'm 31 years old. I fly Blackhawks for the U.S. Army. For most of my life, I've been the reliable one. The daughter who answered the phone no matter where she was. The one who paid off debts quietly, handled emergencies efficiently, and never asked to be thanked for it. I learned early that if you stayed useful, people didn't ask uncomfortable questions. And for a long time, that was enough. I came home on a Friday in late September, after 14 months overseas. Virginia still felt like summer that day, but the trees had started to turn, just enough to remind you that time had moved on without you. My duffel bag hit the foyer floor of my parents' house with a dull thud. 14 months compressed into canvas and zippers. My mother came around the corner with a dish towel in her hands, froze when she saw me, then crossed the distance in 2 steps and wrapped her arms around my neck. She smelled the same as she always had, laundry soap and something floral. "Sarah," she said, like she needed to say my name out loud to believe I was real. My dad followed more slowly. He shook my hand first, an instinct he'd never quite broken, then pulled me into a stiff side hug. "Good to have you home," he said. I'd grown up in this house. I knew every creak in the floorboards, every chip in the paint. And yet standing there in jeans and a plain gray hoodie, I felt like a guest. The dining table was set for 5. My brother, Mark, and my younger sister, Lily, were coming over for a welcome home dinner. Nothing fancy, Mom had promised on the phone. That phrase had followed me my entire career. Nothing fancy. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that required too much attention. When I joined the army at 20, my dad told his friends it was a good way to pay for school. When I commissioned, my mom said I worked with helicopters. When I made captain, Mark joked about whether that meant better parking. They loved me. I never doubted that. They just never knew where to place me. I'd always been the one who fixed things. When Mark's car was repossessed during my second deployment, I wired him money from a base in Germany. When my parents' roof needed replacing, I coordinated contractors from overseas. When Lily struggled to cover her freshman housing deposit, I paid it without comment. That was my role. Show up. Solve the problem. Move on. But imbalance has a way of revealing itself slowly. During my last deployment, I sent photos sometimes. Nothing classified. Just landscapes, sunsets over the flight line, the silhouettes of Blackhawks resting after long nights. Mark replied to one with, "Hope the food's better than your last sandbox vacation." I laughed then. It was easier. Lily arrived first that night, full of energy, hugging me hard and asking if I was taller. I wasn't. She was just remembering me wrong. Mark showed up later with his wife, Jenna. She hugged me politely and immediately asked if I'd had time to date overseas. "Not really a priority," I said. She laughed like that was adorable. Dinner was pot roast and mashed potatoes. Comfort food. The kind of meal designed to pretend everything was normal. My dad said grace, something he only did when I was home, as if ritual could anchor me. Conversation stayed light. Work. School. A neighbor's new dog. Then Mark leaned back in his chair and said, 14 months. That's a long time. Standard rotation, I said. Still flying helicopters? Yes. Must be nice, Jenna said. Seeing the world. I nodded. Seeing the world. That was one way to describe it. Lily tilted her head. Do you get one of those nicknames? Like in movies. A call sign? I hesitated. Call signs aren't decorations. They're earned. They mean something in places where words have weight. But at that table, it felt almost ridiculous to say it. Yeah, I said. We have those. What's yours? Reaper 6. The silence lasted half a second. Then Mark laughed. Not a chuckle. A full laugh. Reaper 6? Come on. That sounds like something from a video game. Jenna grinned. Did you pick that yourself? It's assigned, I said. So people actually call you that? Mark asked, disbelief thick in his voice. Yes. He shook his head, still smiling. You don't really expect us to believe that. I set my fork down carefully. It's not about belief. It's just my call sign. My mother cleared her throat. Let's not make a big deal out of it, she said lightly. It's just dinner. Just dinner. Just a name. Just 14 months in a combat zone. I didn't argue. I never did. The conversation moved on. Mark talked about work. Lily complained about a professor. Jenna asked for the pot roast recipe. I answered when spoken to and stayed quiet otherwise. After dinner, I helped clear the table. My mom squeezed my shoulder and told me it was good to have me home. They're just teasing, she said softly. They don't mean anything by it. I know, I said. And I did. But intention didn't erase impact. I left around 9, telling them I'd booked a hotel near base. My mother protested, said my old room was still mine, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't sleep under the same posters from high school pretending nothing had changed. Driving away, windows down, cool air cutting through the quiet, something settled in my chest. They weren't going to understand. Not because they didn't care, but because the version of me they carried was easier. I was Captain Sarah Whitman, Blackhawk pilot, responsible for crews and missions most people only saw on the news. But to them, I was still the daughter who fixed things and disappeared for long stretches. That night in the hotel room, staring at my reflection in the mirror, I realized something I'd avoided admitting. I was tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of shrinking parts of myself so others felt comfortable. I opened my email and saw the commendation draft sitting there, the one for the Mosul extraction that hadn't been officially announced yet. I thought about showing them. Proving it. Then I closed it. If they were going to see me, it wouldn't be because I forced them to. I turned off the light knowing this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the moment everything started to change. The signs had been there long before that dinner. I just hadn't wanted to read them. Distance doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in quietly, disguised as busyness, missed calls, and jokes that land a little too sharp. During my first deployment, my family checked in constantly. Emails every week. Care packages stacked with snacks I didn't even like but appreciated anyway. By the second deployment, the messages slowed. By the third, I was lucky to get a birthday call. I told myself it was normal. They had their lives. I had mine. But family was supposed to overlap, wasn't it? I remembered standing on the flight line outside Mosul months earlier, dust hanging in the air like fog, my helmet tucked under my arm. I'd taken a photo at sunset, nothing sensitive, just the silhouettes of our birds lined up after a long night. I sent it to the family group chat with a simple caption. Another day at the office. Mark replied 3 days later. Hope the food's better than your last sandbox vacation. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Sandbox vacation. Like I was on some extended gap year instead of planning extractions under fire. I didn't respond. It wasn't worth correcting. Jenna had always treated my job like a novelty. At a barbecue between deployments, drink in hand, she'd lean toward me and asked if I had any good war stories. Like it was a party trick. "Do you ever get scared?" she'd asked, eyes bright with curiosity. "Sometimes," I said. "Like really scared?" "Yes." She nodded, fascinated, then turned to someone else and changed the subject. I wasn't a person to her. I was an anecdote. My mom avoided the topic altogether. Any time deployments came up, she redirected the conversation. "Let's not talk about dangerous things," she'd say, forcing a smile. She was scared. I understood that. Pretending it wasn't real was how she coped. But pretending also meant not seeing me. My dad asked practical questions. Pay. Benefits. Retirement timelines. Once, when I mentioned being promoted, he asked what the salary increase was. "It's not really about the pay," I said. He frowned, confused. "Then what is it about?" I didn't know how to answer that in a way he'd understand. How do you explain responsibility for lives to someone who's never carried it? Mark was worse. Not malicious, just dismissive. "Still doing the army thing," he'd say, like it was a phase. Once, sitting in the backyard, he asked if I'd thought about settling down. "I am settled," I said. "No, I mean really settled. Normal job. Normal life." I almost laughed. I'd flown dozens of missions that year, landed in conditions that made seasoned crew chiefs pale, made decisions with consequences that didn't get do-overs. And he thought I needed stability. I let it go. I always did. That night after the welcome home dinner, alone in the hotel, I scrolled through old messages, saw the pattern clearly for the first time. Me reaching out. Them responding days later. Me sharing pieces of my life. Them changing the subject. I wasn't angry. Anger would have been easier. I was just exhausted. The next day, my mom called. "One more dinner," she said. "Before you head back." I didn't correct her. I wasn't heading back to base yet. I still had leave. But it was easier to let her think I was busy. I arrived at 6. Same house. Same table. Same seats. The conversation was cautious, like everyone had agreed not to step on landmines. Mark talked about work. Jenna mentioned a vacation they were planning. My dad asked about my plans in vague terms. I gave vague answers. We were halfway through dinner when the TV in the living room cut to a sharp chime. Breaking news. My dad had left it on low, like he always did. "Should I turn that off?" he asked. "Leave it," my mom said. "Might be important." The anchor's voice carried into the dining room. "We're bringing you exclusive footage tonight from a recently declassified military operation near Mosul." Mark stood up. "Come look at this." We drifted into the living room, plates abandoned. The screen showed grainy aerial footage. A Blackhawk descending fast into a narrow street, dust and smoke everywhere. Tracers lit the air. The aircraft didn't hesitate. "That's insane," Mark muttered. "Who would fly into that?" The feed switched to helmet cam footage. Shouting. Rotor wash. Controlled chaos. And then a calm voice over the radio, steady and unmistakable. "Reaper 6, dust off complete. Wheels up in 30. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. The helicopter lifted off under fire, banking hard, rounds punching through the air around it. Then the footage cut back to the studio. The pilot of that aircraft was U.S. Army Captain Sarah Whitman, the anchor said. She was later awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for her actions during this mission. All personnel were successfully extracted. Silence swallowed the room. Lily arrived late, stopping short when she saw us frozen in front of the screen. "What's going on?" "That was Sarah," my mom whispered. Mark turned to look at me, his face pale. "That was real?" I nodded. "The call sign," Jenna said slowly. "Reaper 6. "Yeah," I said quietly. "You didn't tell us it was like that," my mom said, tears spilling now. "I tried," I said. "You didn't want to hear it." "That's not fair," Mark said, but there was no strength in it. "You laughed," I said. "You thought I made it up." My dad sank into his chair. "I think we owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "But you could have believed me." My mom hugged me hard, apologizing through tears. Mark stared at the floor. Jenna looked shaken. "I should go," I said. "Stay," my mom begged. "We can talk." "Not tonight," I said. As I reached the door, Mark finally spoke. "I'm proud of you." I nodded and left. Driving back to the hotel, the vindication felt hollow. They believed me now. But I'd already stopped needing them to. And that realization changed everything. I didn't go back to my parents' house right away. I needed space, not distance, but space. There's a difference. Distance is punishment. Space is clarity. For 3 days, I stayed at the hotel, slept more than I had in months, and let the adrenaline finally drain out of my system. My phone lit up constantly. Missed calls from my mom. Messages from Mark that started awkward and turned increasingly apologetic. One long text from Lily telling me she'd watched the footage 3 times and couldn't stop shaking. I read them all. I didn't answer. Not yet. On the 4th day, I drove back. Not because they demanded it, but because leaving things unresolved would have meant carrying them longer than necessary. My mom opened the door before I reached the porch. Her eyes were red, her face tired in a way that told me she'd been replaying everything in her head. Inside, the house was quiet. No TV. No background noise. Just intention. My parents sat across from me in the living room like they were bracing for impact. My dad spoke first. He said they'd talked, really talked, about the last 10 years. About what they ignored. About what they minimized. About how fear had turned into denial, and denial into distance. My mom admitted she'd avoided details because imagining them felt unbearable. My dad admitted he'd reduced my career to numbers because it was the only way he knew how to understand things. "You deserved better," he said. "Yes," I said calmly. "I did." The words hung there. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just true. They asked if we could start over. I told them we could try, but that things would be different. I wasn't going to translate my life into something easier to swallow. I wasn't going to downplay what I did to make it comfortable. Either they listened, or they didn't. Either they believed me, or they didn't. I wasn't explaining anymore. They agreed. And for the first time, I believed they meant it. A week later, I put in paperwork for an instructor position. Fewer deployments. More stability. Still meaningful. Teaching new pilots how to survive meant something different than flying into hot zones myself, but it mattered. When the assignment came through, my family reacted with relief, not disappointment. That alone told me how much had changed. Training others forced me to articulate things I'd never said out loud before. How fear sharpens you if you let it. How leadership isn't volume, it's steadiness. How calm is contagious. I watched students grow into themselves the way I once had, and something in me settled. Months later, the Distinguished Flying Cross was officially presented. My family sat in the chapel, dressed up, nervous, proud. I stood at attention while the citation was read, my face still, my heart steady. Afterward, people shook my hand. My parents stood a little straighter. Mark recorded everything on his phone like he didn't want to miss a second. That night, at dinner, something shifted again. Not guilt. Not overcompensation. Respect. Real, unforced respect. I wish we'd believed you sooner, my mom said. I know, I said. But you believe me now. Time passed. Conversations got better. Questions got smarter. Jokes disappeared. When I talked about work, they listened. When I deployed for short rotations, they checked in without being asked. When I came home, it wasn't treated like a novelty. It was treated like a return. 2 years later, I stood on a flight line watching one of my former students receive her wings. She asked if I'd been scared during my first real mission. I told her the truth. Terrified. She asked how I did it anyway. I told her the truth again. That's the job. That night, my family visited. We ate dinner in my small base housing, crowded and loud and normal. My brother's daughter climbed into my lap and asked if helicopters slept. My mom worried over food. My dad asked questions he actually wanted answers to. On the porch later, my sister asked if I was happy. Really happy. I thought about everything I'd carried. Everything I'd stopped carrying. The need to be believed. The need to prove. The need to shrink. Yes, I said. Because here's the truth. They didn't change because I argued better. They changed because reality arrived without my help. And by the time it did, I'd already learned the most important lesson of all. My worth was never dependent on their understanding. Respect that arrives late still counts, but only if it's paired with boundaries. I forgave them, but I didn't go back to explaining. I didn't go back to chasing validation. I let belief be their responsibility, not mine. If you've ever been laughed at by people you sacrificed for, if your work was dismissed until someone else validated it, know this. You don't owe anyone proof. You owe yourself honesty. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear your experience. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends? What finally changed, if anything did? Drop your story in the comments. If you believe in quiet strength, earned respect, and real boundaries, hit like and subscribe. And if someone in your life needs this reminder, share it with them. Some truths don't need defending. They just need time.